Hi, my name is Paul Arnold, sometimes known as the Stuttering Professor. I'm a strategic planner, facilitator, trainer, and during my years I've read many books and I've also summarised over 50 books. And today I want to take you through this one, Crucial Conversations, Tools for Talking When the Stakes Are High by Patterson, Kerry, McMillan Al Swizler. Look, I think this is a really important book, but in a nutshell, many defining moments in life comes from having crucial conversations, as these create significant shifts in attitude, behaviour, and the quality of the relationships that we have. And this book focuses on techniques on how to hold those conversations in a positive space when surrounded by highly charged emotions. So this is relevant for everyone. Their model has 7 steps. First, start with the heart. In other words, have empathy and positive intent. Stay in dialogue. Make it safe. Don't get hooked yourself by emotion and make sure they don't get hooked. Agree a mutual purpose. Separate facts from story. Agree a clear action plan. So let's dig in the book a little bit more. Our success in life is dictated by the quality of relationships we have. I totally agree with that. As a qualified psychotherapist, I can't say any deeper than actually life is all about the quality of relationships that we have, both with ourselves and with others. And some people seem better at negotiating better quality outcomes than others do. And, they're able to hold deeper, more honest conversations that help keep everyone true. And as we always talk about in the psychotherapy, about holding boundaries. So by being prepared to hold those crucial conversations and often holding them early on, they ensure clarity of responsibility, define expectations, maintain high levels of performance, and ultimately leads to better quality relationships in the long run. And when we let those conversations go by, we let standards slip and unwittingly give permission for unwanted behaviour to continue. And crucial conversations lie all around us, all the time, from performance appraisals at work up to discussing problems over sexual intimacy. Now, Notorious and Markham, who are marriage scholars, examined couples in the midst of heated rows and found people fell into one of 3 camps. Obviously a gross simplification, but we'll stay with that for now. 1, those who get emotionally drawn in and resort to threats and name calling. They basically go to fight. And then those who silently fume and basically, and they sort of go into flight. And those who speak openly, honestly, and effectively. And those in the 3rd camp were more likely to stay together. So we've got to learn the ability to stay what I call in adult relationships, to talk about the hard stuff and not go into child. Now, a study by Keycolt and Glazer on the immune systems demonstrated that those couples who routinely failed in conducting successful, crucial conversations had weaker immune systems. And when communities have been studied, they found that it was not necessarily those communities with the most problems which were dysfunctional, but those communities that dealt with the issues inappropriately. So communities that embraced the issues and discussed in open, honest dialogue were healthier than those who either tried to control or ignore them, even if the issues were much bigger. The mere fact of talking about it and having the conversation, it gets you 90% of the way through the problems. It's not the problem, it's how you deal with the problems, which is the fundamental conclusion from that research. 3 factors that tend to define a crucial conversation. 1, opinions differ. 2, the stakes are high. And 3, emotions are high. And as I mentioned, they've got a 7-step process. One is start with the heart. And where you come from dictates where you will get to. And how we discuss it is often as important as what we discuss. And if we approach the situation with the wrong emotions and mindset and enter the conversation in a place of anger, resentment, hurt, revenge, and we've already made our mind about what's going on and we've come to an assumption, it is unlikely to end the way we need it to. Instead, we have to start with a positive intent, goodwill for the other person, and being open. Thus, we need to make sure before we enter that conversation, we are in the right place emotionally ourselves and create the right space for the other person to be in. And it's very difficult, we know, to change another person. So what we've got to do, the only thing we can change is change ourselves. So the very first principle of dialogue is to start with ourselves. We often see the issue to be with the other person, but we are also culpable. Any work we do in couples therapy is always about, it's a shared space. And we've both done something in that place. And it's up to what we can do to help change the situation. Thus, we need to enter the conversation being open. And our unique past experience creates meaning of that event. I've said that many times about the meaning cycle. And we see what we believe. And we create the meaning, and the meaning then creates the feeling then creates the reaction and the action, and then it creates the result. So if we want to control our feelings, we've got to look at the meanings that we put on it based on our own unique past. Hence, it's critical to realize the multiplicity of truth. There are lots of aspects. We can look at something from that angle, and realize that there isn't one truth of a situation. And very likely, the other person is seeing it from a very different point of truth. And it doesn't mean that they are wrong and you're right, or that they're right and you're wrong. You could just be both seeing it from different aspects. Furthermore, we need to maintain a place of mutual respect. And you've got to be so careful, because non-verbal communication, we talk about how only 7% of communication from the words we use, 38% comes from our tonality, and 55% comes from our body language. Our body is screaming out that we don't respect them. And they will sense that. So we've really got to come to peace and to see, well, you know what? We've all got weaknesses. We're all flawed. They probably did something of a behavior. That doesn't mean they are fundamentally a bad person. The second thing they talk about is stay in dialogue. The key to critical conversation is always stay in dialogue. If the lines of communication go down, there is no hope for a resolution. And if it does go down, you've got to get it open again. The third thing is you've got to make it safe. We talk in the therapy room about creating a safe space for people to talk into. And we need to make the person feel safe. And the safer they feel, the more likely they are to open up and not close down. And closing down can take one of three forms. Masking, where we just pretend to agree, we pretend to be listening, but actually, we've closed down, we've really gone elsewhere. There is avoiding. So we'll do distracting technique. We'll sort of but what about that instead of that? And there's a withdrawing. We'll actually sort of, either physically or emotionally withdraw. And being in high-risk conversations, or any conversation for that matter, requires total sensory acuity. We've got to notice the tonality. We've got to notice their body language. We've got to notice the tightening of the lips, the squinting of the eyes, where the eyes looking and where they're not looking. All that stuff is valuable information. And dealing with people is about being flexible and not fixed, And actually, we've got to sort of, realize that we've got to be almost like on a surfboard as we emerge and we deal with the emerging dynamic exchange that's going on at the moment it comes in. And when one senses a situation becoming unsafe for them or for you, we need to step out of the conversation, out of the content, and go back into process and not get caught in the game that's now in play. Eric Byrne talks a lot about games people play. And to re-establish safety. And this needs to be addressed often by merely restating your positive intent. So you can say, for example, can we just switch gear for a minute? Look, I sense, this is getting a bit over emotional here. My goal here is not to make you feel guilty. My intent here is purely to help us both find a way through this together. And we re-establish safety primarily by listening. We need to demonstrate that we are willing to listen openly and respectfully to them. This can not only be done from an authentic place of compassion and curiosity, and the more we do that, the more we pull information out of them. And the book talks about 4 paths of powerful listening through a mnemonic called AMP, A-M-P-P. The first is ask. The second is mirror to confirm feelings. I understand and get why you are feeling like that. Then to paraphrase, let me just sort of re-paraphrase what you just said to me, to acknowledge and validate their story. And the last thing is to prime. When we think we're not getting anywhere or they're being quite closed, you may suggest something, what you think they're thinking or feeling. You said, I guess you think I'm being unfair here, or I sense you are very annoyed at this point in time. And obviously there will be rupture and repair. There's a lot of work done upon how relationships fundamentally are built through repair. And when you recognize you've done a repair, you've got to apologize. Say, look, sorry, I got it wrong. I overstepped the mark there. Doing that, we've got to model in that relational space how we want that quality of relationship to be with that person. And, also I talk about the double whammy. They don't use the book, but that's my term for it, is if people doubt you, you've got to state your intent twice. Once as a negative, juxtaposed with as a positive. For example, I don't think X, I do think Y. Or I'm not trying to make you feel like that. I want to make you feel like this. So do it the 2 ways. Point 4 in the 7-point plan. Don't get hooked by emotion, or don't hook them. Crucial conversations are by their very nature highly charged, and we know that emotions are contagious. So how do you stay out of the emotion? The first step to controlling our emotions is to name it. And the key here is to manage the meaning. As I said before, it's the meaning we put on the event rather than the event itself that creates the emotion. And to stop getting hooked, there are 3 things they suggest in the book we can do. The first is keep focused on the end goal. Keep saying, this is the intent. The second is to refuse to play the game. Merely being aware that the game is now in play means you're less likely to get caught by it. And say, look, let's not go down, let's not do that again. Let's steer clear of it. Let's find another way of dealing with this. And the third is to avoid the sucker's choice. We think there are only 2 solutions: to shut up and let it go, or to express brutal honesty and just go for the jugular. And there is a middle ground that needs to be walked. To help find that middle ground, we need to ask ourselves a more empowering question, like how to ... without. So, example, how to make them understand how they hurt me without triggering their anger. And we've got to find a way through that stuff. So how do we speak honestly without offending and risk closing them down? It requires a mix of strength, which is both confidence and bravery, and softness, empathy, care and respect. And we've got to find the line between strength and softness. Now there are 5 tools the book goes, they use quite a lot of these, which is defined by the acronym STATE. And this one, they so S, share the facts. T, tell your story. In other words, the meaning you're making of these facts. A, ask for the other person's path, story, how they see it. Then talk tentatively, and 3, encourage testing. The intent is to reach a shared meaning to the facts as a solid basis on which to agree next action steps. Then 5 is agree a mutual purpose. Find the higher level of shared. Find the goal that you both align to. Do we both agree we want to get there? Yes, right. Now we've got that, we can now find ways of getting it. And you keep going back to, have we both agreed? We both want to make this relationship work better. Yeah, right. Well, let's try and keep going because we keep getting pushed off track. And 6, separate facts from story or opinion. So first one states only what is irrefutable evidence. It is what is seen and heard, and not the meaning created from it. It's not the assumptions. A hotel receipt is a fact. The husband having an affair is only opinion at that point in time. And 3 stories we need to listen out that helps us deconstruct how a person is viewing the situation. And this is the classic, the Cartman's triangle. There's the victim stories where they sort of go into, oh, it's not my fault, oh, this happened, oh, their story, which is their sort of defense story. Then you can go on the persecutor. Look, it's nothing to do with me. It's only because you did this to me, and they change the day and they push it all back onto you. Or they go in the rescue story. There's nothing I can do about it. Help, rescue me, save me. So you've got to be listening to what is their defense. What are they saying at that point to deal with it? And then 7 is agree a clear action plan. Because, just because you've reached a point of shared meaning, it doesn't necessarily mean you'll have a successful outcome. There are still a number of pitfalls. 1, no decision gets made. 2, the wrong decision gets made. Or 3, no action happens following the decision. To overcome this, we need to decide how to decide and have a clear action plan on what we're going to do. Now, the book doesn't go through it in as much detail as I wanted, so I did develop this. So this is my version of this. And I'll try and hold this up to you so you can see it. So I say, look, the first thing, we've got to stand behind our feedback, our crucial conversation. Stand strong, own it. Not do, well, someone else said this. Stand strong, be authentic. And we've got to start with the observation of it. What I saw, what I heard was this, irrefutable facts. Then you start to say, this made me think. This is the assumption. This is the meaning that you made upon that. And then the powerful question is, and this made me feel this. Strangely enough, bringing the emotions in plays a really powerful. Then pause, shut up, and let them feed back. Because you may have completely misunderstood the situation. You don't really know what's going on. And then we want to go into the second, which is the assertion, like, what I would like to see, hear, whatever, for that one. And if that were to happen, I would think this. And if that were to happen, I would feel this. Then we go, how can I help? What do you need from me? And all that helps build a model of solving crucial conversations. Criticisms of the book. Look, I found the book gave some really useful tips, and if you haven't trained as a psychotherapist, it's a bloody good book, and it gives lots of insights and strategies on how to handle those situations. And it brings the process to life through use of everyday work and personal examples. And they've got loads of those sort of mnemonics in there, which really help you remember it at the time. That said, I felt it was a less structured approach than I wanted, hence why I did the editorial license and I developed my own model out of that. Furthermore, there are bits, look, I'm quite heavily trained in this area, so there are bits I miss. So for example, there's something about, we often talk about in the psychotherapy world, about keep it down at behavior level, don't take it up to identity level. Because identity level, pushes us into shame, and when shame enters the room, then they disappear out. So we've got to keep it down. you're not a bad person. You just did this thing that wasn't quite good. So keep it down at that level really helps. And furthermore, you know, I think we need to help define what is the issue. Why did they do what they did? And, you know, I often say in management, there are 4 reasons people don't do what you wanted them to go and do. 1, they didn't know what was expected of them. 2, they didn't want to do it. They had other objectives and aims and beliefs. 3, they didn't know how to do it. And 4, they're just not capable of doing it. So really understand, where does the issue lie, to help you try to find an answer to that. And finally, there's something really important that this book we've really got to think about, is the fact, do we have the right to change another person? You know, and do we have the right to change them in the way that we want them to or change? You know, and I think, you know, that's something we need to debate. Anyway, I hope that helps.